On the wall of my shop, above the bench, there hangs a hand plane. The wood of it is dark and smooth from handling, and the iron in it is bright as a coin. My grandfather bought that plane new, before the First War, near 100 years gone. His hands wore those handles smooth. Then my father's, now mine. And when I set it to a board this morning, it cut a shaving so thin you could read a paper through it, same as it did the day it was made. 100 years old, friend, and not a speck of rust on it. Bright and true and working. Now I want you to think of a thing you bought new just 3 or 4 years back. A wrench, a pair of shears, a good knife. And I'll wager some of you are picturing it right now with a skin of orange rust creeping across it, the edge gone dull, sitting in a drawer half forgotten because it is a sorry thing to pick up. You paid good money for it, and in a handful of summers it is gone to ruin. So how does a plane last 100 years, and a wrench not last 5? It is not that they made steel better in the old days, though some will tell you that, and there's a grain of truth in it. No. The real answer is that the old folk knew something about metal that has been plain forgotten. They knew what rust is, and where it comes from, and the few simple things that stop it cold, things that cost pennies and take minutes, and that no man ever taught you, because the men who sell you tools would rather you buy another. I am going to teach you those things today, 6 of them. How to stop a tool ever rusting in the first place, how to bring a rusted one back from the dead, and how to store a thing so it outlives you and gets handed down bright to somebody who has not been born yet. Every one of these I do in my own shop, with my own hands. Every one is cheap, and most cost you next to nothing. And I am going to tell you the honest truth about a few tricks you have seen on the internet, the cola, the potato, and the rest, and which of them actually work and which are a waste of a good afternoon. Because I would not have you pour good soda pop over your grandfather's hammer for nothing. So come on back to the shop with me and let us talk of metal and how to make a thing last. Before I set in, if you are a person who likes a thing done properly and made to last, rather than bought twice, then you and I are cut from the same cloth, and you ought to be here. Tap the subscribe and stay. I bring one of these old skills every week, and there is a lifetime of them in an old carpenter yet. One plain word first, as is my way. I am a carpenter. Tools are not a hobby to me. They are my hand's own living, and I have kept them, and been kept by them, for 50 years. So what I tell you today is not read out of a book. It is what has actually held rust off my own steel through 50 Ohio winters, damp springs and all. And I will tell you straight where a thing works and where it does not, because there is a great deal of foolishness talked about rust, and some of the loudest tricks are the weakest ones. I would rather hand you 3 plain things that truly work than 10 clever ones that do not. A man who trusts a trick that fails him loses his tool. A man who knows the plain truth keeps it a lifetime. Now, to the first, and it is the whole root of the matter. Understand this one thing, and the rest is easy. Here is the root of everything, and it is so simple you will not believe it keeps a tool for 100 years. But it does, and here is why. Let me tell you first what rust actually is, because once you see it, everything else falls into place. Rust is not dirt. It is not something that lands on your tool from outside. Rust is the metal itself, turning back into the earth it came from. Iron wants to join with the air, with the oxygen in it, and when there is a little water to help the marriage along, the iron and the air come together, and where there was bright steel, there is now orange crumble. That is all rust is: iron, air, and water, holding hands. Take away any one of the 3, and rust cannot happen. You cannot take away the iron, and you cannot take away the air. But the water you can take away. And that is the whole game. So here is the first method, and the old-timers lived by it, and it is nothing more than this. you wipe the tool before you put it away. Every time. A rag with a little oil on it, one pass over the metal, and into the drawer it goes. That thin skin of oil does one thing, and it is everything. It puts a coat between the steel and the damp air, so the water in the air never touches the metal. No water on the iron, no rust. It is that plain. The oil is the wall, and the wall is thinner than a hair, and it holds back 100 years of weather. Now I know what some of you are thinking. What oil? And here is where I will save you a mistake because it matters. Do not reach for the cooking oil in the kitchen, the olive oil, the vegetable oil. I know it is right there and it seems the thing. But those oils are alive, in a manner of speaking. They go rancid. They turn sticky and gummy and sour over the months, and they will gum up your tool and hold dust like flypaper. I learned that as a young man and had a sorry gummed-up saw to show for it. What you want is an oil that does not spoil. A plain mineral oil does fine, the same clear stuff sold at any drugstore for a few dollars. It never goes rancid, and a bottle lasts you years. The old woodworkers favored a light oil they called camellia oil, and it is fine if you have it, but you do not need anything so dear. Mineral oil, a few cents worth on a rag, wiped over the steel before it goes away. That is the first and the greatest secret, and it is the one that hangs my grandfather's plane bright on the wall 100 years on. A rag, kept a little oily, in a tin by the door of the shop. You pick up the tool, you use it, and before it goes back you give it one wipe, the way a man wipes his boots before he comes in. It becomes a habit you do not even think on. And it is the difference between a tool that lasts your life and one that rots in a drawer in 3 summers. Now the oil is your everyday wall, the quick wipe. But for a tool you are putting away for a good long while, the tools you use in one season and not the next, the good handsaw that hangs from fall to spring. The old folk had a heavier armor, and it is one of the oldest tricks there is. It is wax, and older still, it is tallow. Here is the idea. Oil is thin, and it creeps, and it wears, and in time, it dries away. But wax is thick, and it sits, and it stays. Rub a coat of wax over the steel of a saw or a chisel, and you have laid a harder, longer-lasting coat over the metal than oil alone. A coat that will hold through a whole winter in storage without a thought. The old carpenters used plain beeswax, which any beekeeper has by the pound, warmed a little and rubbed on and buffed off with a cloth. And older folk than them used tallow, that is, nothing but the rendered fat of beef or mutton, hard as wax at room temperature. Our great-grandfathers wiped tallow on their saw blades, and it did 2 jobs at once. It held the rust off, and it made the saw slide through the wood sweeter and easier, for the blade was slick with it. A tallow-rubbed saw is a joy to push. You can still render a bit of tallow off the fat trimmings from your own kitchen, cost you nothing, and keep it in a tin. And here is a plain, everyday way to use wax that costs you almost nothing. A block of plain paraffin, the kind sold for canning jars or candles. Rub it right on the sole of a plane, the face of a saw, the surface of any tool that slides against wood. Rust protection and a smoother cut both at once, for pennies. Now the honest word, and I always give it, for this method has a limit you should know. Wax is a coat that sits on top, and because it sits on top, it wears off where the tool rubs and works. So wax is not for the working edge you use every day that wants the quick oil wipe. Wax is for the storing, for the putting away, for the long, quiet months. And I will tell you plain, in a real damp place, a wet cellar, a shed by the water, even wax will be tested hard. And there you had better lean on the oil and on dry storage both, which we will come to. Wax is armor for the resting tool, not a cure-all. Use it for what it is, and it will hold your good saw bright from one season clear to the next. We are about at the halfway post. If any of this is proving its worth to you, there is one small thing that helps me keep the shop lights on and these videos coming. Just tap subscribe, and the next one will find its way to you of its own accord. That is the whole of what I ask. Now, back to the bench. Now I have shown you two ways to wall the water off the metal, the oil and the wax. But there is a deeper wisdom underneath them both, and if you take only one thing from this whole video, I would have it be this one. For it is the true root, and it costs you not 1 cent. Do you remember what I told you rust needs? Iron, air, and water. And of the three, water is the one you can send away. Well, the oil and the wax fight the water at the surface of the tool. But this method fights it in the very air of the room before it ever reaches the steel at all. And it is simply this: keep your tools dry and keep them where the air is dry, and half your battle is won before it starts. Here is the thing most folks never understand. A tool does not need to be rained on to rust. The water that rusts your tools is in the very air, the damp, what the old folk called the humors of the air. And on a muggy day, or in a cold cellar where the air is heavy and wet, that water settles out onto the cool metal like dew on the morning grass. You cannot see it happen, but it is happening, night after night, in every damp corner where a tool is kept. That is why the wrench in the leaky shed rusts, and the one in the dry drawer does not, though neither was ever rained on. So the old folk kept their good tools in a tight wooden chest, and there is more wisdom in that plain chest than in any fancy thing sold today. The tight wood keeps the damp outside air from washing over the tools. The wood itself breathes a little and drinks up the small damp that gets in. And inside that closed, dry box, the air stays still and dry, and the tools stay bright for generations. A carpenter's tool chest is not just a box for carrying. It is a dry room in miniature, built to hold the rust off. That is why the old ones built them so careful and tight. You do not need a fine chest to use this wisdom. Keep your tools up off a concrete floor, for concrete draws damp and breathes it upward all night. Keep them in a closed drawer or box, not hung open in a wet shed. And here is an old trick worth its weight. Put something in the box that drinks the damp. A lump of chalk. A piece of blackboard chalk will do. A cloth bag of quicklime if you are on a farm. Even a handful of rice in a jar with the lid cracked. These things drink the water out of the still air in the box and keep it dry around your steel. The old folk kept a lump of chalk in the tool chest for exactly this, and thought nothing of it, and their tools outlived them. Dry air, off the cold floor, in a closed box with something to drink the damp. It is the plainest method of all, and it is the strongest, and it is free. The oil and the wax are your walls. Dry storage is high ground. Hold the high ground, and the walls have little to do. Now, everything so far has been how to keep a good tool good. But I know how it is. Some of you are sitting there with a tool already rusted, a thing you found in a barn, inherited from an uncle, dug out of a box at a sale for $1, orange and pitted and sorry looking. And you are wondering, is it done for? Can it be saved? Most times, friend, it can. And I am going to show you the plain, honest way to bring it back. Not the internet foolishness, the real way that works. Because a rusted old tool of good steel is worth 10 shiny new ones of poor steel, if you can only get the rust off it. For a light or middling rust, the old and reliable way is a good long soak in vinegar. Plain white vinegar, the cheap gallon from the grocery, is a mild acid, and a mild acid is exactly what eats rust while leaving the good steel underneath alone. You lay the rusted tool in a tub, pour the vinegar over till it is covered, and you leave it. Not an hour, a good long while, overnight, and for a heavy rust, a day or two, checking it now and again. The acid works slow, but it works sure, loosening the rust its whole time in the bath. Then you take it out and scrub it with a wire brush or a ball of steel wool, and the rust comes away and leaves the bright metal beneath. Now hear me close on the two things that matter, for this is where folks go wrong. First, Do not leave it in too long, past the rust being gone, for a mild acid, given days and days, will start at last to bite the good metal too. Check it. When the rust yields, take it out. Second, and this one is the important one, the moment you rinse that tool, it will flash to rust again almost while you watch, because you have stripped it bare and wet, and the air falls on it hungry. So the instant it is scrubbed and rinsed, you dry it hard with a rag, and then, this is the part folks forget, you oil it at once, that same minute, with the oil wipe from our first method. Rinse, dry, oil, all in the one breath. Do that, and the tool comes out of its long sleep bright and protected. Skip the oil, and you will have your rust back by morning. For a heavy rust, a badly gone tool, deep and scaly, there is an older and stronger way yet, and it is a wonder to watch, and it does not harm the good metal at all. It is called electrolysis, and it sounds a grand and fearsome word, but it is a simple thing. You stand the rusted tool in a tub of water with a spoonful of washing soda stirred in. You set a scrap of iron in there too, but not touching, and you run a little current through from an ordinary battery charger. The black clip to the scrap, the red clip to your tool. And you walk away. Over a day or so, the current pulls the rust off your tool and casts it onto the scrap iron, and your tool comes out of that bath with 60 years of rust gone and the sound metal untouched beneath. I will not walk you through every wire of it here, for it wants its own careful telling. But know that it exists, that it is cheap, and that it is the surest way there is to raise a badly rusted good tool from the dead. Mind your fingers and do it in an airy spot, and it will give you back a tool you had given up for lost. Now I come to the part where I earn your trust. Because here I am going to tell you what the folks chasing views on the internet will not. You have all seen it. Soak your rusty tool in a bottle of cola, they say, and the rust melts away like magic. The potato and the dish soap, the ketchup smeared on the wrench, every one of them dressed up as some secret the old folk knew. So let me sort the true from the foolish, plain and honest, the way I promised. Here is the truth about the cola. It is not magic, and it is not nothing. It sits between. There is a weak acid in the stuff, and that acid will, given a long soak, loosen a light rust, same as the vinegar does, but weaker and slower. So it is not a lie exactly, but it is a poor cousin to plain vinegar, which is cheaper, stronger, and has no sugar in it to leave your tool sticky and gumming and drawing dust. And I will tell you a thing the cola pourers never mention. On a heavy rust, the cola will leave a stubborn dark film converted onto the metal that is its own trouble to get off, and the rust often creeping back underneath it. So, would the cola work in a pinch, on a light rust, if it was all you had? It might, slowly. But why would you pour sweet soda pop over your good steel when a jug of plain vinegar sitting by it does the job better for half the price and none of the mess? Use the vinegar. Leave the cola for a hot afternoon and a tired throat. That is the honest measure of it. The potato and the dish soap. There is a mild acid in the raw potato, oxalic acid, and rubbed hard on the lightest surface rust it does a little something. A little. It is a parlor trick, friend. Fine for a spot of light rust on a knife you want to shine for company, useless on anything worse. The ketchup is the same tale. It has vinegar in it, so it works a hair, on the very lightest rust, and mostly it just wastes good ketchup. None of these are the secret of the ages. They are things that half work, dressed up to look like wisdom. Here is the whole plain truth of removing rust, and you can forget all the rest. Vinegar for the light and middling rust, electrolysis for the heavy, and oil the moment it is clean. Everything else is somebody selling you a clever story. The old folk did not soak grandfather's chisel in sarsaparilla. They kept it oiled and dry so it never rusted in the first place, which is the whole of what I have been telling you. and worth more than every rust cure on the internet put together. The last method is not a trick at all, but the wisdom that holds all the others together, and it is the deepest thing I know about a tool. It is this: a tool is not a thing you use up. A tool is a thing you keep and mend and hand on. And once you hold that in your heart, all the caring for it stops being a chore and becomes plain sense. Think for a moment on why the old ones took such care. It was not fussiness. It was that a good tool cost a man dear, days of labor to buy, and so a man meant to have it his whole life, and his son's whole life after. The tool was not bought to be replaced, it was bought to be inherited. And so he oiled it, and stored it dry, and mended its handle when it cracked, rather than throwing the whole thing out. And he sharpened it back to keenness 1,000 times over the years. The tool was a member of the household. You did not let a member of the household go to rust. And that is the thing that has been truly lost. Not the oil, not the wax. Those are just the how. What is lost is the why. We are sold tools now that are made to fail, made cheap so you will buy another in 3 years, and we have been taught to think that is normal. To think a wrench is a thing you use up and throw away. It is not. A good tool, cared for the old way, has no reason ever to wear out. The steel does not tire. Keep the rust off it, keep an edge on it, mend its handle when it needs it, and there is no year in which it must die. My grandfather's plane is not remarkable. It is only a tool that nobody ever let go to ruin. That is all. Any tool can be that tool. So when you wipe that oil on tonight, know that you are not just fighting a little rust. You are doing the old and honorable thing. You are keeping a good tool alive to be handed to hands that have not been born yet. There is a kind of quiet immortality in it. The plane on my wall has outlived the man who bought it by near a century, and it will outlive me, and it does good work every single day between. That is what a tool is for. So here is the one small thing I would ask of you, and I will keep it small, as I always do. For the small thing done beats the grand thing only meant to. Tonight, before you turn in, go and find your most used tool. The one that lives in your hand, the good knife, the wrench you always reach for, the shears. And take a rag with a little oil on it, whatever clean oil you have got by you, and give it one slow wipe, top to bottom. Just the one. Feel the metal go smooth and dark under the rag. That single wipe is the whole of the first and greatest secret, and once you have felt how little it takes, you will find yourself doing it without a thought from then on. That is how a habit that saves a tool for 100 years begins, with one wipe, tonight. Now, I would put a question to you, for I have learned there is more old knowing among you folks than in any book, and I mean it honest. Tell me down in the comments, is there a tool in your family that has been handed down? A thing that belonged to your father, your grandmother, someone gone, that still works in your hand today? What is it, and whose was it? I would dearly love to hear of them, for there is nothing I honor more than a tool that has outlived its first owner. Set it down below, and I will read every one. And if you would care to come back to the shop with me next week for another of the old plain skills that the world has near forgotten, then subscribe, and you will find your way back easy. It is a good thing to have company at the bench. Until then, keep an oiled rag by the door, keep your good steel dry, and remember that a tool cared for the old way need never wear out at all. The rust is patient, friend, but the man who wipes his tools is patient longer. God keep you, friend. We will talk again.